Are you ready for your first question?
Yes.
Okay, just a preference, these questions can be kind of lengthy, so please do not hesitate to ask me to repeat any part.
Got it.
So for your first question, reimbursements are a large component of the tasks that you will do. What are the requirements for a valid receipt? How would you deal with an invalid receipt? And how will you streamline the reimbursement process for your board members?
Can you repeat that last part of the question, please?
Yeah. What are the requirements for a valid receipt? How would you deal with an invalid receipt? And how will you streamline the reimbursement process for your board members?
So, for AS funding and banking, the requirements for a valid receipt is an itemized list of all the items that were purchased and proof of payment, which means like proof that something was bought. But if I were given a receipt that is invalid, I would first ask the board member, whoever the runner was who purchased these items, and see if they are able to be able to go back maybe to customer service and get a receipt that could provide an itemized list, because sometimes receipts come with just like the full total, but in order to get the full reimbursement, AS requires to see that itemized list. So I would first just have that conversation if they're able to go back to the store and get that itemized list and just the valid receipt. And if it's the proof of payment that is missing from the receipt, I would just ask to see if they do have that itemized receipt, that if they could show us like their banking statements, just because if you're able to match the time, or not the time, but the funds from the banking statement to the receipt total, along with the place of the store, it is also considered valid. Sorry. So those are like the two options that I would give to them, and also just like if they ever need assistance with asking or what kind of questions they need to ask the customer service, I would also be an aid for them as well. And then, sorry, you were also asking about the just like streamlining the reimbursement process.
Yeah, how will you streamline the reimbursement process for your board members?
Honestly, I think that's what I would want to focus on, especially during the summer, because summer is like basically where board members are all in their planning processes for the upcoming year. And in their planning processes, I just want them to be knowledgeable that there is a reimbursement process that they would need to follow, and there are protocols that they need to follow in order to get their money back. A lot of the funds that we handle is that there's three types of ways money goes through AS, but a lot of the ones we handle is through the out-of-pocket reimbursements. And so I would have to ensure them, I would have to educate them on how the reimbursement process works and how they would need to take steps in order, sorry, let me restart. I would probably come up with like a more simple version to explain to them on how the reimbursement process works, especially because working with AS can be difficult sometimes. But once I make like a clear, like maybe it could be like a workshop type of like thing that I had or hold with the executive board, I could just simply explain to them how receipts work and how check requests work and how I'm able to aid them in those processes. Yeah.
Thank you. Are you ready for your second question?
Yes.
Okay. The treasurer position is one where most duties lie outside of executive board meetings and general body meetings. How will you provide support to your board members, not only as treasurer, but also as a top 5 leader?
One idea I really wanted to implement this year is, actually, one thing I really enjoyed about this year is that we had those one-on-one conversations and meetings with you to discuss our plans and just what our visions are. And I wanted to do that more in depth this year too, because although the meetings had us explain more of like our visions and like what kind of supplies we would need, and when we have the meetings before the events about more of like what our plans to use certain funds are, like I kind of want to have that conversation with them at the beginning of the year, kind of just talking about their passions and why they want to do this, what their visions are even without a budget. Because I know that, of course, we're really handling money, and then we actually have a budget to follow, but just initially hearing their passions and what they strive for and their perfect event, perfect activity that they want to present, like I can help them in aiding that as well. And I feel like being able to hear out their goals, their passions, their visions without any limits can help me do my job in managing that kind of those budgets and kind of giving them my best advice on how they can like perform this event or activity to the best of their abilities.
Thank you. Are you ready for your third question?
Yes.
Okay, this one is a hypothetical scenario. The treasurer will budget our funding across over 30 events through the course of this academic year, starting with FG, FACN, banquet, socials, and other board events. How will you manage budgeting for multiple small and large events at the same time, given equal importance? And how will you continue to utilize the newly implemented budget sheets?
Sorry, can you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah. How will you manage budgeting for multiple small and large events at the same time, given equal importance? And how will you continue to utilize the newly implemented budget sheets?
Sorry. So with managing budgeting in terms of like, or with managing budgeting during like some of the most busiest times Samahan has, again, all of these events have, whether they're small or minor or major, they have equal importance, like what you said. One tool I would really want to use this year is FABs. I understand that this committee is ran under the director of funding, but because we have positions such as the accountant, I would want to, sorry, oh my god, I'm so sorry. But I would want to use positions such as accountant to help me in aiding those like busiest times. I believe that the budgeting sheets this year has made it very easy and efficient to explain to the board members who are like just trying to get like their budget and like their own supplies and stuff. So if I were able to educate the accountant on how to do that, I feel like they would be able to aid me in those busiest times and also delegate certain, I would also be able to delegate certain tasks to both me and that accountant as well. And sorry, can you repeat the full question one more time? So sorry.
You're okay. How will you manage budgeting for multiple small and large events at the same time, given equal importance? And how would you continue to utilize the newly implemented budget sheets?
And then in my speech, I also mentioned having meetings at the beginning of each semester. I believe that in these busy times, you kind of struggle with, or it could be kind of a struggle to deal with who, like, even though they're all equally important, sometimes like you have to put more attention into one or the other depending on when the event is occurring. But if we have these meetings in the beginning of each semester, that start the conversation of where our budgeting or where money should be delegated, depending on like the venue or the supplies or just the needs of each board member, it will what's the word? It will shorten the amount of time we have to spend on like deciding which things get more funds than the other, because we're able to have that open conversation with multiple of our board members, and it'll be more like a collaborative effort rather than just my own job of like handling all these funds and budgets that, you know, I'm being asked for from different people. Yes.
Alright, are you ready for your fourth question?
Yes.
Okay. As treasurer, you will also be an enforcer of attendance. How would you make this a priority?
So with attendance, again, I just want to preface to if I were to be elected treasurer, I just would make that preface to the executive board that they're making that commitment of being an executive board member. And I want to instill that idea that we're here to serve our community, and without attendance, it's gonna be harder to manage with just a couple people versus our entire executive board. even just one person missing, you're missing one piece of a full team, and each board member has their own delegated responsibilities and duties, and without one person, you could be missing a key piece to what could be, the solution to our problem. And with attendance, also, I want to be able to be as present as I can be, and if I weren't able to be present in certain times and my attendance is also running low, I would want to be transparent about why my attendance is down and what ways I can make up for it if I weren't able to be present in like certain times. So if I weren't able to attend, let's say for example, an e-board meeting, an e-board meeting or an event, I would ask like the e-board member as just a way of support if I can help with the event process with the planning process, or with the e-board or with executive board meetings. I would ask if there's any way I can support them in like what they're doing for the next upcoming weeks or so, and also just make sure that I'm checking up on the minutes as well, because even again, things come up in life, and sometimes you can't handle whether your attendance or you can't handle whether you'd be able to attend or not. But if you're able to be transparent with your executive board and rely on their support the same way that they would rely on my support, I feel that everyone can have like an understanding of each other, and attendance will probably be better.
All right, thank you. Are you ready for your last question?
Yeah. Yes, I am.
All right. All right, so this is also a hypothetical scenario. Also, it's a two-part question. So an executive board member has overspent after purchasing supplies for which they clearly agreed to the budget. How do you proceed? And what protocols would you implement? What protocols would you implement to prevent this from occurring?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
The whole thing, or just the last part?
The whole thing, please.
Okay. The executive board member has overspent after purchasing supplies for which they clearly agreed to the budget. How do you proceed? And what protocols would you implement to prevent this from occurring?
I wouldn't rush to blame at all in terms of when people are overspending. I know that everyone has their reasons, whether they're valid or invalid. I believe that sometimes people just don't really realize something that they're doing is not like following protocol. And I understand that even though I set the precedent, like that there's a protocol and that there's a budget that's set and that they need to follow this in order to get that reimbursement. Sometimes, like I understand, again, what I said before, things happen, and you can't control what has already happened. That's the way I see things, and then you just have to kind of attack the problem at hand right now. So if they were to overspend, like I would just ask them, honestly, just what happened, like, because before every event, I would want to have that meeting with them on what they're spending, how much their budget is, and if they think they would need a higher budget. And after that meeting, if they still were to overspend, again, like what I said, I would have that conversation with them and just ask them what the overspending was. And sometimes overspending is valid, and what I've learned from holding like events such as the Pie fundraiser and also having conversations with our current treasurer, budgets are set a little lower than what we're actually able to spend in order to prevent like that actual overspending. So if the budget is, or if a board member overspent, I would just make sure that what they were overspending on was things that were actually necessary for the event, rather than something that is more like unnecessary for that event specifically. And if it were valid, I definitely would just have that conversation to be more transparent with their purchases, especially when we're dealing with AS funds, because it's not just their own money, but it's it's funds that we're distributing amongst like all e-board members, and each e-board member, again, each event is equal in importance. So if an e-board member goes overspending in one event, that's kind of diminishing another event. And if they were more transparent, I feel as though that I could probably support them in that way and kind of give them advice on what could they have done to, like, instead of just overspending without communicating that first.